Hey guys, it's Daniel. Welcome back.
On July 20th, 2017, an interview with Layne Staley's mother, Nancy McCallum, was published by Seattle journalist Sue Ring from MotleySue.com. In this interview, Nancy went into detail about her son's childhood, his personality, how he got started in music, his death, and more. Quote, "Layne was my first child, and I was just 19 when he was born. When he was in the delivery process and he could see all the bright lights, you could hear him cooing, which is kind of unusual because babies were usually screaming. Then they propped me up and laid Layne in my arms. He was watching the lights and his little mouth was in an O shape and he was cooing. And I looked down and said, 'Hi Layne, I'm your mom.' I think it's unusual that he was that natural from the very moment he was born. As a child, Layne was quiet. That was his nature. He was a child with a very long attention span. He was also very sweet and very shy. He loved music, and by age 2, his first very favorite song was 'Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head.' It was so totally adorable to hear him singing that in the backseat of the car, because he really didn't know the words. As he got older, he wrote down in his Dr. Seuss book, All About Me, that he wanted to be a singer. He was 9 when he wrote that, and I thought, well, every kid wants to be noticed, like a fireman or a policeman or a singer or an actor. So I didn't take much note of it because we all sang around the house and acted very silly. He was hysterical. He was one of the funniest people. My mother was like that too. As a child, he was in rhythm band. A lady we knew, Mrs. Graham, had a little rhythm band and he was really too young to join. He was just 2 or 3. But he loved music so much and I thought he would enjoy it, so I said to her, just let him come a couple of times and see how he does. He did just fine. He was the youngest in the group and he did just fine, so she let him stay. Once as a child, we were crossing the pass, moving to Spokane, Washington. It was hot, very hot, and I started hearing him sing a song from Sunday school. And I thought to myself, I should pay attention, and I pulled over. And it turned out our car was overheating. He was intuitive. In 5th grade, he borrowed his Uncle Bob's trumpet, so that was his first instrument. Then our family friend Fred loaned him a drum set and he loved the drums. He wasn't really into the trumpet, but the drums he loved. And then our neighbor sold him a drum set and he changed his middle name to Thomas because he admired Tommy Lee from Motley Crue. Now, there was a little band in high school and I have to laugh because I didn't even know. It kept changing members and houses. I don't think we ever realized that in their minds it was a band. Then, Layne's stepbrother Ken came to the house one day and said, "Hey, some of my friends are looking for a singer." And Layne said, "I'm not a singer." And Ken said, "Oh, just try it out anyway." Ken drove him over and he tried out with a band called Sleaze. They had a lot of people signed up and Layne was the 7th one to be interviewed and they said, "Shut down the auditions, we found our singer." That's the story as I heard it. So, he was in Sleaze for a while, and then they became Alice in Chains, in being spelled with an N apostrophe. Layne did some backing vocals with other bands too. The Seattle scene was very tight, and these kids all helped each other out, singing in the background. It was very much a brotherhood, a fraternity. When he met Jerry Cantrell, Jerry was in the band Diamond Live for a bit. Eventually, he, Jerry, Sean, and Mike Starr became Alice in Chains, AIC. I just assumed that Alice in Chains was sort of temporary. These things don't last. I didn't really take it seriously, and I apologize to Layne for that, because I know how hard he was working, and traveling, and trying to get rested and the crazy lifestyle. He was naughty, like the other guys and gals, but I had raised a child to be good and kind, and I assumed that he could hold on to that, even in this crazy environment, and that it wouldn't last. I'm sorry that I was so naive, but in a way, I'm really glad that when he came home, it was chocolate chip cookies and meatloaf and family time and teasing his sisters. I didn't inquire as to what was it like, or who did you meet. It was just a world that was so foreign to me. Plus, he got enough of those questions. He once said that some of their answers to journalists were just made up in order to tease them because they all asked the same questions and it got really boring. In retrospect, I am unbelievably proud of Layne. I would say Alice in Chains is even more relevant now, given the opioid crisis across our country. The purpose of his music, Layne would say, "Mom, don't they listen to the words?" The purpose of his music was to warn people. This is a trap, and it's a trap that even I can't get out of, he'd say. He tried to warn people. With all of his money and all of his fortune and fame, he was in treatment 10 times. He died at least 5 times that we know of. He was dropped off at a hospital, he had infections, and he was still writing. He was still warning people. He was still performing. I don't understand addiction, but my thought is, I believe you. I believe your story. I've answered thousands of emails and letters because people deserve that. That is my nature, and that was my mother's nature too. How long will I be on this earth? I can do this. Young people, they deserve it. These are fans of Layne. They ask me because who else are they going to ask? A typical story is a young man whose parents are quite a lot older than he is. They were in their 60s, and he was in his teens when he started writing to me. He was in a small town where they didn't have help. Everything was working against him. So, him and others send me letters and they send me pictures. The least I can do is to respond. Someone else may not see it that way at all, and that is perfectly fine. This is my journey, and I thank my son for the opportunity to grow spiritually and to be more understanding of other people, much more compassionate. Not only are the community and the fans worldwide honoring Layne, but through our family, we are honoring them. They have lifted us up and kept us strong, and I still hear from new people. Layne went to high school as Layne Elmer, his stepdad's last name, and friends from high school who didn't know his career have said to me, Layne Elmer was Layne Staley? He was the quietest kid in our class. I said to his friend, Calvin, I guess the stage gave him permission to belt out all the feelings we have. And he said, Nancy, he did it for us all.